Hello and good morning. Welcome to Matcha Mornings with Diane. I am your host, Diane. I am a dancer, performing artist based in New York City, and welcome to my podcast where I talk about all things mindfulness, life in New York as a performing artist, creativity, art, and everything in between. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my podcast. Hello and good morning. Welcome to another episode of Matcha Mornings with Diane. Today I will be talking about overcoming my addiction on self-improvement and constantly healing. I feel like this is such a common thing for people like me, for artists, especially dancers who've had an extensive ballet training background because we are such perfectionists. And sometimes I think we just get so caught up in this idea of perfection and striving for it that somehow we forget what it's like to actually live and to still show up even when it's messy. Somehow there's also like this fear of not wanting to be seen when we're not perfect, and we know that as humans that we are not perfect. And so I'm so excited to dive deep into this and how that journey has looked like for me, and how I have also slipped into this constantly improving and constantly healing loop that, yeah, definitely put me in a spot where I feel like I haven't really allowed myself to be as vulnerable as I thought I could be and I want to be. So, yeah, I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. I will try my best to keep this pretty short. If you listened or watched my episode from last week, I know that was a really lengthy one, but I was really just in the flow state. And honestly, that is also something that I'm really proud of because, yeah, I think this whole thing of just like being able to speak and share my thoughts on camera is still pretty new to me, and even just like using my voice, because I did mention that I didn't really grow up being so vocal. I use my voice in dance, like my body is my instrument, but yeah, I think just like being able to use my literal voice has also been healing and so expansive for me. But yeah, at the same time, it's still very new to me. And I am really trying to not feel like I have to get it perfectly first before I show up. And yeah, I think this is also just like me truly embracing that humanity, that humanness in me, and stop identifying so much of my worth and who I am into, just what I am capable of doing. That, my worth is not inherently tied to what I am capable of doing and achieving. So, yeah. Let me just take a few more sips of this and we can dive in and just, yeah, spill the tea. Apologies if I sound so nasally. I definitely am coming down with a cold. I feel like it's the weather change, but yeah, I can't believe it's already November. And let me just try to think of when this whole loop of being this hyper perfectionist self of mine began. I mean, I think I can definitely trace it back to as early as my childhood. I mean, I think unconsciously I was definitely participating in this thought loop because I grew up in an Asian household. And I think as Asians, especially when we know that our parents have gone through so much to give us this really comfortable life, there's almost like this want and need to prove that, like their hard earned work is not going to waste, and that, we will also be working just as hard to make up for all of the sacrifices that they have done for us. And there is nothing wrong with that. I think that is such a selfless act. But at the same time, I think when you're a kid and you've had this sort of conditioning where everything just seems to be planned out for you, that everything just has to make so much logical sense, and pretty much that should be your blueprint for the rest of your life, just so you are more guaranteed like a shot at success. And yeah, I guess for like most of my life, because that is the way of thinking that my parents grew up with, especially my dad. I think just always like having this long term plan, always like 5 years and 10 years. I was like so driven by that. And there is nothing wrong again with planning. I know that it is an essential part of life. But I think there is also something to be said about being so caught up with the future that we also forget to live in the present and actually just like savor everything from moment to moment and trust that, whatever our plans are and our desires are for like the next couple of years, they will eventually materialize. And, you know, there is no need to obsess over how this will all pan out. So, yeah, I think for me, it just really started with that whole idea of always making sure that I am staying on track and that I am like hitting all the goals and the milestones. And yeah, I think when you're just like so used to that kind of structure, I think it's just so easy to get caught up in this constantly striving mode that once we get to achieve something, it's like, okay, let's not even give ourselves the time to, like relish and celebrate this victory. Let's just keep going because we're not where we want to be at. And the thing is, in life, we're always going to want more. Like, there's always something more that we want. And I know for myself that I am so guilty of that. And it is only just in the recent years. And I think more particularly this whole year, I am just like really being taught to learn how to slow down and be okay with not being perfect, being okay with making mistakes, and not feeling like my path is always so clear cut. So I think for me, that's really where it all stems from, like this obsession and just like this toxic cycle of being in this loop of constantly improving, constantly striving, always perfecting, and always healing, that I have really forgotten what it's like to, to live and to show up just as I am, even when I'm not perfect. I know that a big part of it is also just like this conditioning that I've had in my household, like growing up in an Asian household. I think a lot of you who have grown up in, who've grown up in like similar settings, I think you guys can attest that in Asian households, we don't really talk about our emotions and feelings. And so I feel like a lot of us grew up suppressing a lot of the uncomfortable emotions because our parents were also probably taught to, always just put up like a good front and to not appear weak, or that appearing weak will put us in like this vulnerable position. And, again, like just as humans, we always crave for safety. And so we'd rather not show ourselves in those moments. And when we feel like we just want to express certain emotions like anger and frustration, I know for myself that anger is definitely the emotion that I suppressed for so long. And I am not going to blame my father for this, but it really stuck with me for many years that, like getting angry is almost illegal, that it is poisonous to get angry. And so I think for me, growing up with that idea, it made me think that I am not allowed to feel anger. And so I think I just like resorted to like pushing it down until, in the past few years, I have realized, oh my goodness, I think I have actually been so angry for so long. And now I just do not know how to feel it because I do not remember the last time that I actually felt angry. And so, yeah, even now I'm still learning how to allow myself to feel that and to not be afraid of feeling that. I think with suppressed emotions, it's really just like this fear, again, of like being seen in those uncomfortable dispositions. And I think for me, it has also just been like a journey of being able to provide that safe space to myself first. I think like with anything, like if we want to feel safe, like being seen, we really have to allow ourselves to see ourselves, in every way and all of us. So I think for me, especially in this past year, I have really allowed myself to face some shadows and even like my own icks and my weaknesses instead of like turning away from them. Like I really allowed myself to shine a light on them and be okay with them being around and not feeling threatened whenever they come up, because I think that is just like a part of life of being fully seen. And especially as artists, like it's a little ironic, but yeah, like I think for most of us artists, like we are most of the time in the business of being seen. And yet I think more often than not, we are actually pretty scared of being seen fully. And yeah, it does take a lot of practice. Like no one is perfect. And I truly do not believe that there's anyone who's completely fearless. I think we just decide to show up like in spite of fear and, be okay with that. Like being okay with like walking alongside fear and still living and showing up as ourselves and proving to ourselves that we are worthy as we are here right now. And there's nothing more that we need to do in order to prove our worthiness. And yeah, I think I know for myself, I have definitely thought that my worth was tied to my achievements and what I can do in this lifetime. There's nothing wrong with wanting success. There's nothing wrong with having goals. But I think when you get so caught up with always like perfecting and striving, yeah, I think you can unconsciously get stuck in this loop of almost being afraid to know who you are when you're not doing anything, to know who you are when you're just still, when you're just being. I know for myself, being like a city girl my whole life, it still scares me sometimes when I have those days and even just like moments in my day when I'm not doing anything. I think many of us definitely struggle with that, especially with, you know, with this current era of digital media and the internet. We just have like access to everything and we're just like so overly stimulated that the moment we put ourselves in an environment where we do not have access to these things that give us like the dopamine hit, then like we freak out because a lot of these things that we normally do not see or observe when we're so busying ourselves, they just come up. And maybe for some of us, it's been years since we've actually allowed ourselves to like sit with all of these emotions and be okay with them whenever they come up and not panic and just be like, okay, like I am not my thoughts. I am just the observer. And there is no need for me to identify with these thoughts. And just because they are coming up like clouds, they like these thoughts don't really have any truth until I decide so. So, yeah, I think I just am getting comfortable, like, again, showing up perfectly imperfect and being okay with, like, those days when I'm probably not doing as much as I normally do. And yeah, like, just really embracing seasons of a bit more stillness, embracing seasons where I'm not just like constantly working or feeling like I have to be productive, and showing myself and my nervous system that my worth is not tied to how productive I am, that even doing the simplest things is already me living. And like how I'm showing up right now, like I'm already worthy as I am. Like there's nothing more that I have to do, but really just show up and embrace who I am in this moment and allow myself to see that and allow others to also see that. I mean, I know that I was like really stuck in this toxic cycle too of like constantly working and constantly improving. I definitely had a phase where I was always reading self help books. And I think for me, it was obviously like very innocent at first because I was like, oh, I think I just want to learn something, I want to gain more knowledge. But I think with, like with the type of information and with so much information that we have access to now, we are actually constantly consuming things that I don't know. I think sometimes we don't even have the time to really digest and absorb and integrate those lessons, that we just get stuck in the consumption part and we don't even get to apply. And yeah, I think I definitely had that realization too recently. And yeah, I think for so long, I know that even in my dance journey, this has also come up very recently, that I felt like if I'm not having a private session or if I'm not taking X amount of classes, then that means I'm not worthy enough as a dancer, or I'm not even worthy of calling myself as a dancer because I have tied my identity as a dancer and as an artist to the number of classes that I'm taking, versus like looking from it from this lens of like, how intentional can I be with the plans that I have? And, again, like it's also okay to still have structure. Like I believe truly that it is still a must to have structure. during your days, during your weeks. And I know for myself that I also have to have some sort of structure for me to be able to thrive in my everyday life, even when I'm in a slower season. I think, especially in a slower season, because as they say, like with life, like there's always duality, and there's the masculine and the feminine energy. And in order for the feminine energy to thrive, there has to be a masculine container to it. And so, yeah, for me, that is like structuring my days in a way that I make sure I still have like my daily practices, and I am actually engaging in those practices every day before I actually, like go on with other tasks that I have during the day. And the other part of that too is also being okay with the fact that there are some days when I might also forget to do these practices because life happens, and not beating myself up for not being able to do those practices as I normally would, and being okay with stumbling a little because, again, I feel like even with these practices too, when you're a recovering perfectionist, I think it's still easy to go to that place of being like, oh my God, if I made this mistake, then I'm already falling off the wagon, or I'm going to be left behind. And so, yeah, I think even with those structures, I'm also allowing myself to be pretty flexible. I am giving myself more flexibility instead of always being so rigid. I think for me, it has helped me think of like my structures, not just like in a very linear and very like box type of form. I think it's allowing myself to see things in a more cyclical and circular way. And yeah, I think for me, that has definitely given me more of a room to really just be okay with seeing myself when I'm not so quote unquote perfect. And yeah, I think for me, that's also just a way for me to try to break away from this cycle of always feeling like I have to be striving and improving all the time in order to be worthy of love, to be worthy of my desires and any type of achievement. So, yeah, I think for me, that has been the biggest lesson. And yeah, again, like, don't get me wrong, like, there's nothing wrong with being obsessed with things and like being so engrossed with the things that you love. But there's also something to be said about having that balance. I know that balance looks different for everyone, but too much of a good thing is also bad. Like in life, duality always exists. And so, yeah, we will have our seasons of really like just zoning in and like being so obsessed with our craft. But there also has to be some time and space when we're not like constantly consuming, when we're constantly proving and striving. And yeah, like these moments of just like being, just having some sort of like stillness and a bit more slowness and fluidity. Like these seasons are just as important. And I think we forget that in life, especially when we were kids, like this was how we actually lived life. When we didn't really like care so much about what was next, we were just like so present. And as we grow up, of course, like I think it's just part of aging. We definitely just have more fears and just a lot more responsibilities. But I think in life, as we age, like we are being taught to continue to still have like that childlike wonder and curiosity and not taking things so seriously all the time because, yeah, like life is so boring when everything is just like so serious. And for me, I know that I need a lot more play, especially when I'm, just coming out of a season of like busyness and, just like being in the zone. It is exhausting to always be so serious. And, it's also important for our health. Like, I know for myself that I definitely need to remember to carve out time to actually be social, to actually fill my cup in a way that I am also still nourishing the relationships that I have outside of my career, outside of what I do. And of course, like still being in touch with my family because, yeah, I think in life we have to also remember that while our careers are a big part of us and a big part of our purpose, like that is not the only thing that we have, and that shouldn't be the only goal that we have for ourselves because there will come a time, especially when we're a lot older, when, yeah, like all we want to do is really live. And I think we will also look back and be like, oh, yeah, I feel like I spent so much of my time trying to achieve certain things when maybe I could have given myself more time to just really be outside and, play and be around people. And I know for myself, especially losing a mother, I know just like how short life can be as well. And the truth also is there will never be enough time. And so for me, it is so important, especially like during these slower seasons, is for me to be able to carve out that time to also be around the people that I love and, yeah, like be okay with showing up already as I am and also prove to myself that, yes, like I am surrounded by so much love already. Like there's no need to fix something in order for me to be worthy of showing up and in order to be worthy of these relationships that I already have in my life or even, yeah, cultivating and discovering new relationships. So, yeah, I think for me, it's just been a lot of that and giving myself really just the space to make mistakes again because we are human. We're going to continue to make mistakes. Like that is a fact of life. And I feel like just being stuck in this like always improving, always healing loop, we do not give ourselves like the chance to truly live a very beautiful and multifaceted life because, yeah, I mean, I guess it's like watching a film, I don't think there's any great story or any great film that didn't have some sort of conflict or conflicts that made us want to root for the protagonist and certain characters because, yeah, like that's what makes our lives so dimensional. It's really just allowing ourselves to be human, allowing ourselves to make mistakes and to remind ourselves that these are just mistakes. This is not life or death. And yeah, we are allowed to have fun. We are allowed to have fun. Not everything is so serious all the time. And so, yeah, just live. It is okay. There are going to be periods in our lives when we're, yeah, again, acquiring a bit more knowledge, but there also has to be that time when we're just allowing ourselves to be able to live what we had learned, what, like apply what we have already learned at this point and trusting that we already have it, right? And yeah, really, like, I don't think there's a wrong or right way to live. Like, I think the only recipe for living is being and allowing and deciding simply that we are already worthy as we are. And yeah, like, it's also such a natural cycle that we are always going to be evolving. I don't think we have to force that. We don't have to force like constantly improving. And I think especially for people like me, like type A and all of that, I know for myself that most of the time I actually have to do less because I know that my relationship with control can be so extreme. And actually, yeah, like that's probably one of the things too that made me stuck in this constantly healing and improving loop is, yeah, just like my relationship with control and trying to improve that. Because, yeah, like truly in this life, there's only so much that we can control. The rest we just have to let go. And I truly believe that there is a higher being within ourselves, around us, that's truly guiding us to be able to live the life that we're meant to live on this earth and on this planet. And yeah, I I just know for a fact that when I remember that there's only so much that I can control, that it is truly okay for me to just surrender just a little, to let go just a little, and be okay with just being surprised. And yeah, what is like a wonderful life without any surprises, right? Like, let's not spoil the ending for ourselves. I mean, yeah, I think for me, it's mostly just like keeping my relationship with control in check. And yeah, I think embracing these seasons of just like slowness and also not doing so much all the time, because I know that eventually I will be back in that zone where I will be so busy, and I know that I will also look back at this time saying, oh man, like I wish that I allowed myself to relax just a little bit more, because yeah, now I'm so busy, and I know that I'm going to miss this time. And so yeah, I owe it to myself to just be present and to also just trust myself that I've already done the work. And yeah, I will continue to work on things because it's human nature to want more, to actually, yeah, try to do more in order to achieve things. But yeah, it's really just like finding that balance and that middle ground and those seasons of just really being and slowing down and being okay with truly following our heart's desires and not be so led by logic. So, yeah, I mean, at this point, too, honestly, I am so done with self help books. Like, if anyone just gives me another one, I want to throw it out of the window. And yeah, I am happy that I have come to this point of realizing that, and yeah, being okay with doing less and knowing that my worth, my inherent worth as a human being, is not tied to what I can do, what I can consume, and the knowledge that I can acquire. I am already worthy as I am. I can already be seen as my fullest self right here, right now. And there's nothing that needs to be fixed. I just have to live my life and, yeah, be okay with not taking everything so seriously. Just doing things for fun and following my heart. Logic will always be there. I mean, we're humans. Like, our mind will always like try to do somersaults, but I think during these seasons, especially when it's a little slower. Yeah, I just try to embrace my heart's desires and truly follow like my simplest joys. It can be as simple as, yeah, like going to the farmer's market and making myself a meal. Like, I haven't cooked myself a meal in a while. Like, I only started preparing my food again, I think just like a few months ago, like maybe 3 months ago. But I think for like the past year and a half, I have mostly just been like ordering stuff in. I mean, okay, for breakfast, I have always like prepared it myself. I have an air fryer, but yeah, just like being able to experience like that joy again of actually using my chopping board and actually slicing produce and ingredients and actually like making a dish for myself. It has been like such a joyful experience. And I know it's so simple, but I think it's during these seasons that we truly realize like we don't always have to be in the zone. We don't always have to be in go, go, go mode or, yeah, again, like constantly striving because, yeah, we also need to learn how to enjoy the fruits of our labor. And yeah, the only way that we can enjoy that is to actually just be present and give ourselves the time and space to truly be. And yeah, I think, for me, at least, it's truly learning to have that balance. And sometimes it can feel a little forceful. I mean, I know for the beginning of like this slower season for me, it was really tough and jarring because, again, like my mind went to this place of like, oh no, I'm going to fall far behind if I don't do this and don't do that. And I was just like being driven by logic. But I know that on the other hand, I have been working so freaking hard the beginning of this year that, I deserve to have my season now of just like taking it a little slower and yeah, just really enjoy things as they are, enjoy the moments as they are unfolding. And yeah, I know that I do not have to worry about the future because living is always going to be in the now and the future will happen no matter what. So there's no use of me thinking about the future and constantly hyperfixating on that because yeah, honestly, like the gift is truly in the present. And yeah, I know that for most of us, we could definitely use more of just being in the present and yeah, just trusting that we will always be led to where we're meant to be. We will be led to the opportunities that will help us, shape our future and help us get the desires and hit the goals that we want. But yeah, truly, like the only way to be able to get there is to remain present and remember that we are already worthy as we are. Like, that's not something that's up for discussion at this point. And yeah, you do not have to fix yourself, right? Like, you are already worthy as you are. And it is such a natural thing. And it's like a cyclical thing that we are always going to go through some sort of evolution. We don't need to force that out of ourselves. So, yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. And yeah, if there's anything that you can take away from this episode, I just hope that, again, you remember that you are already worthy as you are. You are not a project that has to be fixed all the time and constantly refined. Allow yourself to live, allow yourself to enjoy those moments, those seasons when you're not required to be striving. Like, really savor those moments because, yeah, you know that soon enough you will actually be in another project again. And so I think the best thing that you can do for yourself and for everyone around you is to, yeah, really just enjoy the moment for what it is, especially when it's like really slow. Because again, like life will become so fast paced again. And I know for myself, especially with the industry that I'm in, like with the dance industry, like it really just comes in waves. And as they say, when it rains, it pours. And so I know for myself too, like this is me really allowing myself to just stay present and yeah, be okay with showing up as I am and not feeling like I have to refine myself and shapeshift in order to, yeah, get to where I want to be. I know that I will get there. I will. And a big part of getting there is also remembering who I truly am at my core and being able to stand in that truth and knowing that I do not have to prove who I am and that I will be in those spaces where I want to be in when I actually just really allow myself to fully embrace who I am, especially in these slower seasons. And yeah, again, like that's life. Like there's always going to be duality. And so just being able to embrace both ends of the spectrum and also just being aware of, like which end of the spectrum we normally fall into and not being afraid to end up in the other spectrum that, we probably normally aren't operating from. I know for myself, I'm very ambitious and I love being on the doing side of the spectrum. And so most of the time, I know it's allowing myself to be on the other end of the spectrum, which is the being and just staying present. So, yeah, you guys are worthy as you are. You are not a project to be fixed. And yeah, you deserve to be seen who you are right now, like flaws at all. So, yeah. Happy November and thank you so much for your support. I hope to see you in the next episode.